Welcome to the Immigration Talk Show on Indus TV. I'm Rishi Khanna, CEO of Encore Consulting Services, and with me is attorney Poonam Bhuchar.
Hi, my name's Poonam Bhuchar and I manage a small firm in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, in which we represent Fortune 500 companies with corporate immigration law and compliance. I'm also affiliated with Schaeferman Lakin that has 45 other attorneys, and we basically cover any area of law that you could possibly need.
So today's topic is FDNS visits, an important area in the current immigration environment, and we'll try to learn more about it from attorney Poonam Bhuchar. So attorney, what is the purpose of an FDNS visit?
So FDNS was created a few years ago. It's the Fraud Detection and National Security Unit, and it comes under the Department of Homeland Security. The purpose of it is to verify H-1B, L-1s, R-1s, and EB-5 petitions. So an FDNS officer can come and verify that the petition is valid.
Does an FDNS officer just show up? And if so, why?
So an FDNS officer can show up for three reasons. The first is to verify the petition. So every FDNS visit pertains to one petition that you file under H-1B or L-1B. It can be to verify where the employee is working or details about the employer to make sure that it's an actual employer. The second type of FDNS visit could be because they're investigating the employee, or it could the employer, or it's a targeted form of a visit. The third type of FDNS visit can usually be on behalf of the Department of State. So sometimes we have clients that are stuck with a 221G in India, and Department of State will reach out to FDNS asking them to verify details about the company.
Interesting, because it's almost unknown to the employer from the employer perspective as to why the visit is. And good to know that it could be any one of those three. I guess the next question would be then, is the officer allowed to talk to the employee without the employer's presence?
So yes, the FDNS officer can talk to the employee outside of an employer's presence. And a lot of the times that happens because they'll show up at the client site, or they'll show up at the employer's place of business and maybe the HR is not there, or they can also, under COVID, show up at the home location. So technically, there's no reason for an employee not to answer the FDNS officer's questions. It's better to answer the basic questions than refuse to do so.
Okay, which kind of brings me to my next question, which is two of them actually. First is, so should the employers proactively have seminars with their H-1B or other visa employees and prepare them for such visits, number one? And number two is like chicken and egg, which is when does the attorney get involved? Right after the visit, or even in the proactive seminars? Typically,
we've seen scenarios in our office where the employee thinks it's not a big deal and they haven't notified HR. And what ends up happening with that is HR's not aware, and HR will get an email asking for all these documents. And sometimes it's important for HR to know the types of questions that were asked. And if the employee doesn't relay that, HR is in the dark. So it's good to tell your employees that they need to contact HR if they were contacted by an FDNS officer. It's about being that Boy Scouts motto of be prepared. It's about being prepared as an employer, and it's also about letting the employee know how they should behave if an FDNS officer does contact them. I can tell you in our office, we've seen cases where the employee has given out their cell phone number to the officer, and the officer has been texting them on the side, asking them for documents, asking them for questions. And the employee got frustrated and didn't know what to do. And finally, when they went to the employer contacted us, and we got involved and the officer stopped. Sometimes it's good to get an attorney involved at the outset, because it just sets the boundaries for where the officer can ask questions, where they can't, and it just means everything is responded to in a uniform manner.
So in my opinion anyway, it seems like having a proactive approach to it, preparing all your employees, be it your HR or your consultants, be ready for such a surprise visit and surprise contact by the feds, if I may. Which actually brings me to my next question, which is what kind of questions can an FDNS officer ask both the employer and employee? What is in their realm? What are legit and not? What are the questions we don't have to answer?
So usually anything pertaining to the petition: salary, job title, location, who your reporting manager is at the client site, who your reporting manager is at the employer. For the employer, it can be how many employees they have, how many H-1Bs they have, how many US citizens green cards they have, anything that is in the realm of the petition that was filed. If for some reason an employee feels that they're not sure how to answer the question or they're unsure of what's being asked, then we always say it's okay to say, I'm not sure, I need to ask my employer, or I'm uncertain of what's being asked, can I contact my employer, right? So if an employee is asked how many employees does the employer have, employees may not know that, and it's perfectly fine, rather than to guess, to say, can I contact the employer and get back to you? And then the employer will contact us and we'll ask the officer to send us an email of the documents that they need from the employee and the employer. And we basically take the reins and take control of that situation in liaising with the officer. If you think about it, as human beings, if we're not prepared and we get nervous, we may not even hear the question sometimes and answer incorrectly. And that incorrect answer, we've seen, can put that officer on guard as to whether this is a real petition or not, unnecessarily.
So it's always better to play defense, it seems, by getting your employer, if you're an employee involved, or if you're an employer, getting an attorney involved if you feel it's being too intrusive.
Right, and the truth is, employers and employees do have a right to refuse to answer the questions. But if they do, the FDNS officer will stop, but then they will go back and they will document that. How many employers want that on their documented that they refuse to answer an FDNS officer's question?
But some of these things are dynamic. I might have a good week and we go from having 75 employees to 80 the next week, or by the time we had sent the petition to now, we are up by 10% or down by 10%. So is it okay to give the current numbers or the numbers that we are given on the petition, for example, relating to the number of employees specifically?
It depends what the question is. If an officer's saying how many employees do you have, it's okay to say, I currently have 90 employees, but when this petition filed, I had 78.
What other types of questions can the officer ask? Can they ask on past years, as in how long back can they go? Or can they ask about any internal projects or internal employees? Or what is the realm of these officers? Because some officers may tend to be more inquisitive than the others. Mostly they aren't, but some tend to be.
No, you're right. There are officers that will keep pushing and ask questions that are outside the realm. And that's why it's important to have an attorney involved. So anything within the bounds of the petition is fine. But I think when they start going and asking about past petitions or about things outside of the petition, I think that's when you need to get your attorney involved, and then the attorney can ask the officer the basis of the questions and the reasons that these are being asked.
When is the right time to hire an attorney during a site visit? Is it after you feel like you can't answer any more questions, or right away? What is, in your opinion, the right time?
So I think it's important to remember that we've had both scenarios. So for clients that are always with us, we say when the employee gets contacted, we need to know. If you want us to help you, we need to know.
So right away?
Right away. But we've had clients who think, well, it's just a couple of questions and we can answer them and we can go ahead and respond, and they do. Once everything's gone, then there's nothing we can do. And sometimes the way questions are answered, I think I've brought this up in the past. I had an employee asked, does the employer, H-1B employer, withhold any of your income? And the employee said yes. The employee was talking about taxes, Social Security, and health insurance, And the officer was asking, are they holding any fees pertaining to your H-1B, the legal fees or the USCIS fees? So we had to go through 3 rounds of emails to convince the officer that no, the employer is not holding back income for taking back money for legal fees and USCIS fees. So that's why we say to everybody, the minute the employee gets contacted, the employee should tell the employer, and the employer should decide whether they want us involved or not.
Understood. So there's not really a published list of questions that an officer can or cannot ask, correct?
Not really, no. It's anything pertaining to the, yeah.
So typically feds, but the employers and the employees, is there any particular reason why we should not take the FDNS site visits lightly?
They may seem like simple questions, but they should not be taken lightly for a number of reasons. In the last couple of years, FDNS, Department of Homeland Security, has said that they're going to increase the number of site visits, which means some of our employers have had multiple site visits because each site visit pertains to each beneficiary. If the information that is flowing is inconsistent, then you may get flagged by USCIS or FDNS. In addition, there's also a sharing of the memo that we've seen in the last couple of years, a sharing of information between DOL, FDNS, USCIS, and ICE, which means if you're violating laws and you're not paying the employees, or then the employee's not at the location that they're supposed to be at, then these things are going to get reported back, and this could catch up with you over time. So it's really important that the questions get answered correctly and the information is collated in a way that people can go back to and refer to when needed.
Actually, which is kind of contradictory, and again, in the fact that if I had put in the petition that the revenues were, for example, 7 million one year, and if this year's run rate, and I'm just giving some numbers, 9 million, or the number of employees went from 68 to 90, whatever, right? There could be some inconsistency. So the fear here is the misinformation could be more of a miscommunication.
But that's why it's important to have attorneys involved from the outset. So even with that, technically, when an officer comes looking for a particular petition, they ask for a time frame when that petition was filed. They'll ask for the 3 most recent pay stubs to show that the employee was paid. Things like revenue increasing can be documented, and you can show that at the time the petition was filed it was X, and today our revenue is that. Normally revenue questions are not asked. It's more about how many employees do you have, are you H1 dependent, and things that are in the actual petition, the job description, the SOC code, to verify that the employee is really in the position that was put in the on the LCA.
And finally, what advice would you give employers regarding such site visits?
Is to prepare the employees, to prepare the receptionist, to prepare as HR. There should be a link between everybody, and everybody in the company should know. For instance, a receptionist should know who an FDNS officer is, who an ICE officer is, who a DOL officer is. They should know that if they get a contact from the employee, that they need to contact HR. HR needs to know what their role is in it is and how to respond. It just keeps the information flowing.
So do you have any proactive seminars that you offer to your clients or potential clients for being prepared for such government inspections?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We can just advise you when people contact us. We advise, and we can do group calls with employees and just advise on how to approach, what to do. Some employees, for instance, we've had calls are like, I'm not sure this is really an FDNS officer. One particular employee was asked for $3,000 and we told him not to pay, but he still paid because he was so scared, because it's pertaining to his visa. They have families and they just don't care, they'll pay the money. No FDNS officer is asking you for money. And we just walk through, you know, the things that you can ask if you're unsure of an officer, the questions you can ask and how to respond if you're not sure, just so that the information flows freely.
Can you ask for an officer's identification?
Absolutely. So when an officer comes in, you should ask to see their badge. And if they're on the phone and you're unsure if that really is an FDNS officer, I've told clients it is perfectly within your rights to say to the officer, I'm sorry, but you know that there are a lot of scam calls out there and I am unsure that this is really you. Could you please email me and provide me your contact details so that I know that it really is you? And that's perfectly fine.
So you do have, going back to the seminars, do you have proactive seminars that you offer to your clients?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So now we'll go to questions from audience. The first question is as follows.
Hi, this is Raj. I have a question. How can one be prepared for an FDNS site visit? Is there any checklist to follow?
Hi Raj, I think this goes back to what we've been discussing. It's more than a checklist, it's more about preparing the employees and preparing HR and the staff in the office regarding an FDNS visit, and we can definitely help you with that.
Awesome. Here's one more.
My name is Gayatri. My question is, if there is a query from FDNS officer during the visit, how much time is given to the employer to submit the required paperwork?
Hi Gayatri, thank you for the question. Typically we've seen about 3 days, but when we get involved, if additional time is needed, I have asked for it and we have been given it. I've often found that if you are polite to the FDNS officers and give them valid reasons, they more often than not will accommodate.
That's a great session with you, attorney. Very informative, and I do feel like I know just a tad bit more and prepared for the next site visit, which we've been seeing more of.
Absolutely, and I
Thank
think
you.
we'll see more of, but thank you for having me.
So that was a very knowledgeable and information-filled session from attorney Poonam Bhuchar. Thank you very much for letting us know some more details. We all are already familiar with this process, but always good to hear from a professional. And for any of the site visits or related matters, issues, please feel free to contact attorney Poonam Bhuchar and for her services and legal advice. And thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.